Welcome to Unveiling Grace, a podcast dedicated to finding our own story in the unique stories of the fellow Nazarenes who serve alongside us. I'm Matt Hastings, and I'm a pastor who's been in the Church of the Nazarene all my life. I deeply love the church and all the ways that she's shaped me, and I want us to hear from each other about how the Church of the Nazarene has saved us. In a day and age where there's a lot of line drawing and finger pointing, we want to pull up a chair to the table of our people's past and sit through their stories. Through our guests and the telling of their stories, we will veil the identity of the storyteller until the very end, with the hope that you'll allow their story to shape your view of them rather than what you've heard about them. Thanks for joining me weekly as we invite fellow Nazarenes to tell their story of why they love this church and why they've stayed.
Okay.
So you wanted to be a missionary, and how did that start and what ended up happening? Because you are a pastor in the Church of the Nazarene now.
The search for a missionary became, I was a member of a Missionary Baptist church.
Okay.
And I was curious about what missionaries did, and there were no missionaries in the Missionary Baptist church.
No missionaries in the Missionary Baptist, but the definition of being a missionary in the Missionary Baptist church was what? To
Nobody talked about missionaries. It did not come up. So I started asking, what does a Missionary Baptist do?
Right.
And the pastor told me that they visit homes and they have prayer in the homes. They have Bible study and they visit the sick. And so we started a missionary society.
Okay.
Of ladies.
Okay. In the Baptist church, you're going to be, this is probably as high of leadership as you can get.
Yes.
Christian education.
I was Christian education director and teaching Sunday school, but I was still curious about the Missionary Baptist part. So we started a mission society that went out every Thursday night and had prayer in the homes of sick people and Bible study. And we even started, much later, we started a nursing home ministry where we went into nursing homes and prayed for people.
Which is such a valuable ministry of visitation and sharing Jesus and evangelism in that way. But the definition of missionary, at least for you, you're looking around saying,
This is not
what I thought.
The missionary idea. And we were studying in the book of Acts, studying Paul and his missionary journeys. And it just wasn't fulfilling.
It isn't adding up because we're not really doing the work of a missionary in that respect. Yeah. So then
we're doing good church work. But
sure, of course. It's valuable church work. And interestingly, for you to be now in the Church of the Nazarene. So how did your story with the Church of the Nazarene start? Because you are, I know you're raised Catholic, and then you decide to attend where your husband, where you guys were choosing this in a Missionary Baptist church, and then now you've served in the Church of the Nazarene. How did that start?
We were, the pastor wanted to start a compassionate ministry, which was, he was developing a partnership with the Neighborhood Christian Center, and the Neighborhood Christian Center had a huge presence in the Nazarene Church. And he asked if I would be the leader of that new ministry. And of course, I was, and we started giving out food, and we had Bible study again, and teaching the young people, and in talking with the director of Neighborhood Christian Center, it was mentioned about missionaries, and then she started telling me about the missionaries that the Nazarene Church had. And when I started researching the missionaries in the Nazarene Church, they were doing what I had learned.
Yes, that made sense.
Yeah, it was making sense. And then the Nazarene Church also has a global presence, which Paul was going all over the place, winning souls, converting
Yeah.
lost people. And I'm like, this is what missionaries do. It wasn't just visiting in homes, because
Sure.
he did have church in
Of
homes.
course.
Even
And our denomination has hit from the beginning, sent people out. And of course, that can be right around the corner.
yes,
But early on in our history, it was to other places, and other places than just the U.S. So that did end up sort of intersecting in your mind and thinking, okay.
yes, because I even read about couples that were on the field together, and he had Priscilla and Aquila out
Yeah.
there working along with him. And I'm like, sounds a lot like, I was getting more satisfied in my heart about what missionaries did and what they were. So I started studying with a group of pastors that the director of Neighborhood Christian Center had organized, and they had instructors coming in. I did not know I was being credentialed.
Yeah, you didn't know it was the course of study.
It was the
You
course
didn't
of
know,
study
right?
for credentials, but I was so eager and hungry for it. And then Pastor Tillman started. He was a pastor of a Nazarene church in Memphis.
Yeah.
And he started counseling me and directing me. And I was really excited about what God was doing. And God knows I like adventure, anything new and different. I love it.
Well, and so you mentioned Pastor Tillman. Are there people in your life, as you can look back, that were those champions, championing you, encouraging you? There are times in the ministry when it's hard, and there's compassion fatigue and stress, and the rate of pastors leaving the ministry is tough to watch. But there are those people who are in our lives that will say, "Hey, you're doing good, and I'm with you, and I believe in you." Are there people like that?
So many, but Charles Tillman comes to mind, and Edward Husband, who was one of the instructors that was brought in for the course, for the course of study to guide the pastors. And there was also on the social side a pastor. He's retired now, but he's in Alabama. He was pastor of the Savannah Church of the Nazarene. He just like took me under his wing as far as connecting me socially with pastors who had studied. And every time I would think these courses are difficult because they are almost college level, but he said, "Oh, you could do it. You could."
Yeah, and that's what I mean. It's someone saying something that they believe in you, and then I love that introducing you to what would turn out to be colleagues. These are colleagues of yours, and then to know, because this is a beautiful family, we are colleagues. We are the same, and no matter how we got here, we have this same calling and this passion. I think that you are also that. I mean, I know that you are also that person to a lot of other people as an encourager. So that's a beautiful gift. You found yourself in a really an evolving community, the church that is the majority of the church were Spanish speaking. It sort of changed, and where most of us might say they deserve a Spanish speaking pastor and resign, you decided to become that Spanish speaking pastor. You learned Spanish to stay in the neighborhood.
Yes, that was, they were such loving people, and there were so many needs for the Hispanic community in the beginning of the ministry. There were no resources available. There were no uh, there were no welcome arms. Like Carol Smith welcomed me into the Nazarene Fellowship and Dwayne Hood, and they just embraced me and became my friends. And in the Hispanic community, there was so many obstacles that they had to go through as far as immigration was concerned, the language was concerned, because there was no signage for Hispanics at the time that we started, and they always needed an interpreter, and I wanted to communicate with them.
Right.
And in order to communicate, I needed to learn the language, and I would always use interpreters, and God kept moving interpreters. So I had to learn how to speak the language myself.
Well, you know what, though? I don't think you had to learn. You agreed to learn. And that, to me, it is such a beautiful, it is shepherd, it is pastor to say, and they wanted you.
Yeah, I think we became friends before we became partners, because they were sharing space with us. We were having service in the morning and they would have it in the afternoon. We didn't have music in our church. We used a boombox.
Yeah, sure.
And they had people that were learning to play the guitar. And one day they asked if they could come to church early and play music for us. And I said, yeah.
Sure.
And of course, we started sharing fellowship, and then we share food.
What a beautiful, I'm astounded by that. It is really the gospel at work, the good news of uniting people.
It was definitely God.
And I have just always been so encouraged and inspired by the way that you just said we became friends before we were friends, before anything else. And I think that's such a beautiful relational piece of this. And I have talked about our denomination, and particularly our lens of faith. When I ask you this question, when I say what about our family matters to the world, I guess maybe it's phrased in a way that, it's everybody has a really similar answer to this, I suppose. But as our denomination, what is it that is good and helpful, and what is it that we have as Wesleyan Arminian holiness people that matters to the world right now?
It's our idea of family, I believe, that is so connecting, because anywhere that you go and you say Nazarene, if there's another Nazarene present,
that's exactly
you're no
right.
longer strangers.
You can go anywhere.
You can go anywhere, and if
it's true.
We had a church van, and we were out of town, and we were parked at a Cracker Barrel, and some of the people came out and they're like, "Is that your van?"
Because if it is your van, we're family.
We're Nazarenes too. And so we started having a conversation about people that were in the Nazarene,
of course.
Tennessee district or Mid-South district.
Right, you name someone.
You start naming people, and I know them, and oh my goodness, we have so many stories that we're not only a national church, we're a global church that's connected all over the world.
Because it's true. You could go, I mean, and we have. I've been out of the country and had a shirt on that said Nazarene. And someone was like, hey, I'm
Nazarene. And it is a Nazarene church in my community.
It's an instant family connection.
Yes.
I think the beautiful thing about, particularly as a Nazarene pastor, a woman who really kind of hit the ceiling of a Baptist ministry, who I can't go. You thought that was it, and that's fine. You didn't know any different.
I was not looking for any hierarchy or anything. And after, when I started in the credentials course, and doors were open for pastoring, I had pastor friends that were still in the Baptist church that were running into roadblocks, and I couldn't understand
Because you didn't have those.
because I never had any resistance as far as ministry was concerned. It's been open, and even now.
In God's prevenient grace, He went ahead and doors were opened, and
Oh, wow. Oh, yes.
what a beautiful
Yes.
way of articulating His call on your life, and how it happened. Really out of, I love hearing about tangible gospel stuff, which is food and resources and helping hurdles for our Hispanic brothers and sisters who might be apprehensive to share too much, but for them to know we are brothers and sisters and I'm an advocate for you. And I want to, those are things I think really speak to your character and speak to what God has done and is doing and will do in your ministry.
Yes.
It's been remarkable to know that.
It has been. And even when I went before the credentials board, our DS at the time was Dennis Johnson, and his wife had gone before the credentials board right before me in the same session, and they had given her a hard time with some hard questions.
Threw some curveballs at her.
Yes. And as a result, the DS went in and had a conversation with the credentials board. And when I went in, we just had a good time. It was amazing. I've not had any resistance in the Nazarene Church. God has always.
And I feel like that's really how it, of course I know there are always going to be obstacles, but it really should be an affirming, encouraging experience to walk into the ministry, to educate for sure, asking tough questions, I understand, but to say, we want you and we need you, and we see gifts and graces.
And I think about that when sometimes I have to serve on the credentials board, and I remember those days of how comfortable the board made me feel, and I try to make the people comfortable.
And I've done the same thing. Because I know that I remember that feeling of saying somebody, they cared about me and they wanted me.
Yes.
You know, I don't want to push somebody down. I want to pick them up and go with them.
They're already nervous.
Yeah, you're already nervous, and yet you had already accomplished a lot in your ministry and what God had already done, and it's brought you to us today. And I'm so grateful that you spent time with us. So, who are you?
I am Albertha Bragg, pastor at Eastside Church of the Nazarene in Memphis, Tennessee, serving on the Mid-South District.
Thanks for being with us, Pastor. It's good to have you.
Thank you for asking me.
Thanks for joining us on the Unveiling Grace podcast. This is a ministry of Hermitage Church of the Nazarene. If you'd like to stay up to date on the podcast and other ministries of our church, like the church's Facebook page and follow along. Or you can subscribe to the Unveiling Grace podcast on whatever platform you're using now. If you've enjoyed this podcast, help us out by leaving us a rating and then share it on your social media platforms. Thanks for listening to the stories of those serving alongside us.